For 15 years, David Chen had lived with a hole in his heart that no amount of success could fill. His son had died in a car accident when he was just 2 years old, or so he'd been told. Now, standing before the crumbling St. Michael's Orphanage, with his inheritance check in hand, David thought he was simply honoring his late father's memory by saving the place. He had no idea he was about to meet the son he'd spent 15 years mourning, alive and calling another man father. Welcome to Stories Worth Telling. Before we begin this powerful story of sacrifice, hope, and unexpected miracles, please let us know in the comments which city you're watching us from today, and if you believe stories like these deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us ensure they're never forgotten. From his corner office on one of San Francisco's hills, David Chen's view stretched endlessly across the city. The 38-year-old successful tech entrepreneur was reading the lawyer's letter for the third time. The $2.3 million inheritance from his father, Michael Chen, was an opportunity to open a new chapter in his life. But the strange condition in the letter had puzzled him. Before deciding what to do with the money, he had to visit St. Michael's Orphanage. His father had never mentioned this place. Michael Chen was a quiet man who didn't like talking about his past. David set the letter on his desk and walked toward the window. The city's noise came muffled through the glass. 15 years ago, from this window, he could see his son Tommy's daycare. Now, there was a luxury shopping center there. Tommy, little Tommy Chen, 2 years old, loved to laugh, just learning to say, "Daddy," lost in a car accident while David was neglecting his family, focused on his company. His wife, Lisa, had also died in the crash. David was left alone, learning to live with guilt. "Mr. Chen?" His secretary, Jennifer, stood in the doorway. "Are you ready for the 2 o'clock meeting?" "Cancel the meeting," David said. "I'm going out of town today." Jennifer was surprised. David never canceled meetings. Work was his life, his only consolation. An hour later, David found himself at the address the GPS had directed him to. St. Michael's Orphanage was in the suburbs, in an old neighborhood. The building was worn, paint peeling, yard unkempt. But children's voices came from inside, joyful shouts, laughter. David got out of the car and walked to the main entrance. After ringing the doorbell, a middle-aged woman opened the door. Her hair was gray, her face tired, but her eyes warm. "Hello, I'm David Chen. I came to talk with you about the inheritance." The woman smiled. "Ah, David. I'm Margaret Washington, the director here. We were expecting you. Please come in." David entered and was surprised. The building that looked dilapidated from the outside was warm and lively inside. The walls were covered with children's drawings. Toys were scattered in the hallways. Children's voices came from everywhere. "Please come to my office," Margaret said. "I want to tell you about your father." They sat in a small office. Margaret's desk was covered with photographs, letters, various documents. "Your father, Michael Chen, was one of the founders of this orphanage," Margaret said. 30 years ago, when this place was about to close, he and a few friends pooled their money and bought it. Michael made regular donations every month, but he never came. He was a very private person. David was surprised. "My father never mentioned it." "Some good deeds are done in silence," Margaret said. "But now we have difficulties. The building needs repairs. Our debts are accumulating. If we can't find $800,000, we'll have to close next month. 43 children will be left on the streets." David looked around. Children's photos were on the walls, smiling faces, hopeful eyes. Each was a story, each was a future. "Would you like to see the children?" Margaret asked. David nodded. As they walked down the corridor, children looked at him with curiosity. The little ones hid behind their older siblings, while the older ones approached courageously. "This is Aunt Margaret's friend," said a girl. "What's his name?" "I'm David," David said, crouching to the child's level. "I'm Sarah. I'm 10 years old. Are you going to live here too?" David smiled. "No, I'm just visiting." When they entered the playroom, David stopped. In a corner, a young man about 17 was playing Lego with small children. When the boy looked up, David's heart stopped. That face, that eye color, that smile. It was impossible, but it was real. The young man standing in front of him was Tommy. Grown up, taller, but definitely Tommy. "This is Jake," Margaret said. "One of our oldest children. He was left at our door 15 years ago, when he was 2 years old. He's a very good boy, always helps the little ones." David's world shook. Jake, Tommy, hadn't died. He was here, alive, grown up. "Jake," Margaret said, "come meet Mr. Chen." Jake approached with a smiling face, extending his hand. "Hello, Mr. Chen. Aunt Margaret told us you came to visit." David was trembling as he took that hand, his son's hand. After 15 years, he was shaking hands with his son. "Hello, Jake," he said, unable to keep his voice from trembling. "Are you okay, Mr. Chen? You look a bit pale." I'm fine. It was just a long trip." Margaret looked worried. "David, would you like to sit down?" David nodded, but after Jake left, Margaret looked at David. "David, did something happen? You've gone very pale." David took a deep breath. He had to tell Margaret the truth, but he didn't know where to start. "Margaret, I'm going to tell you something very strange. Jake is my son." Margaret blinked. "Excuse me? 15 years ago, my wife and 2-year-old son died in a car accident. At least that's what they told me. But now I've seen Jake and he's definitely my son, Tommy Chen. Same eye color, same smile, same hand shape." Margaret was shocked. But that's impossible. We don't know anything about Jake's past. He was left at our door. There was no identification. "We can do a DNA test," David said. "But I know the truth. He's my son." Margaret was confused. "If this is true, if Jake really is your son, this is huge. You know he has a family here, right? He's part of our family." David nodded. "I know, and I don't want to force him away. But I thought he was dead for 15 years. Now I'm learning he's alive. I don't know what to do." "First, we need to stay calm," Margaret said. "We need to tell Jake the truth, but we have to be careful. This will be a big shock for him." David found Jake in the kitchen. The young man was making sandwiches for the little children, whistling. "Jake, can you talk with me for a bit?" Jake washed his hands and sat next to David. "Sure. Are you curious about the orphanage?" "Actually, I want to talk about you. Margaret told me you came here when you were 2 years old." Jake nodded. "Yes, but I don't remember anything. My first memory is being here. Aunt Margaret and the other children were always my family." David's heart was breaking. His son didn't remember him. "Jake, have you ever wondered about your family? Who they were, where they are?" Jake shrugged. "I used to wonder, but then I realized my real family is here. The people who love me, who take care of me, are here. The past doesn't matter. What if they came looking for you? Your real family?" Jake stopped and looked at David. "Why are you asking this, Mr. Chen? Do you know something?" David was tongue-tied. That terrible night 15 years ago came to mind. He and Lisa had fought. David had stayed at the office until late hours. Lisa had decided to take Tommy and go to her mother's. There was a storm that night. The roads were slippery. "Jake," David said slowly, "what if I told you something that would change everything you know?" Jake's eyes showed worry. Do you know my family?" David nodded. "Jake, my name is David Chen, and I think you're my son, Tommy Chen." Jake's face went white. That's not possible. We can do a DNA test, but Jake, from the moment I saw you, I knew. You're my son. These people raised me, took care of me. Where were you? If you're really my father, why didn't you look for me?" David's eyes filled with tears. "Because I thought I'd lost you. I thought you were dead." These words stopped Jake. "Dead. Your mother was taking you to your grandmother's house. There was a car accident. I was told both of you died. I believed I'd lost you both for 15 years. Tears glistened in Jake's eyes. "My mother, What was my mother like? David smiled. She was beautiful, very beautiful, and she loved you so much. She used to sing you lullabies, that Spanish song, Duérmete mi niño. Jake's breath caught. I know that song. I remember someone singing it to me in my dreams, but I couldn't remember who. That was your mother, Lisa. Jake collapsed into the chair. This is too much. I'm confused. David sat next to him. Jake, I'm not asking anything from you. I just want to get to know you. I can't make up for the 15 lost years, but maybe we can build something looking forward. Jake looked up. What about the children here? They're my family too. I know, and I don't want you to abandon them, but maybe together we can help the children here. Jake's eyes lit up. You want to save the orphanage? Not just the orphanage. Let's expand this place, modernize it, help more children. Jake thought, are you really my father? We can do a DNA test, but I'm absolutely certain. Jake smiled. Then Grandpa Michael was my grandfather too. He also supported the orphanage. David was surprised. Yes, my father founded this place. I guess helping children runs in our family. Jake stood up. Then let's go tell the children the good news. The orphanage is saved. David also stood. Jake, Tommy, my son, I missed you so much. Jake stopped, looked at David. I missed you too. I didn't remember, but the longing was always in my heart. Father and son embraced. A 15-year void closed in that moment. That evening, 43 children gathered in the big hall. Margaret stood up, with David and Jake beside her. Children, Margaret said, I have wonderful news for you. Mr. Chen is buying our orphanage and expanding it. No one will have to leave here. The children applauded, shouted, made joyful screams. Jake stepped forward. And I'll tell you a secret of mine too. Mr. Chen is my father. The children were surprised, then became even more excited. Jake's father came. Jake's family found him. David looked at the crowd. All these children were now under his responsibility, and he was no longer alone. 3 months later, the renovated St. Michael's Orphanage held its opening ceremony. The old building had been completely restored, and a new addition had been built. It now had capacity for up to 100 children. David had moved his office from San Francisco here. He managed his company remotely, but his real work now was these children. Jake, now Jake Chen, had finished high school and would leave here to attend university. But he would return every weekend to help his little siblings. Dad, Jake said one evening as they walked through the garden David had built behind the orphanage. Do you ever regret it? You completely changed your life. David smiled, watching a group of children playing on the new playground equipment. Jake, you and these children are my real wealth. Money had no meaning without you. What about Mom? As far as you can remember her, would she approve of this situation? David looked at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Your mother was the kindest person I ever knew. Helping these children, being with you, I think she would be incredibly proud of what we've built here. Jake nodded, then pulled something from his pocket, a small worn photo. I found this in my old belongings that Margaret saved. I think it's Mom. David's breath caught. It was indeed Lisa holding baby Tommy in the hospital the day he was born. The photo he thought had been lost forever in the accident. She was beautiful, Jake whispered. I can see why you loved her. She would have loved the man you've become, David replied, his voice thick with emotion. You have her heart, her compassion. That night, David sat in his new office, a simple room overlooking the playground, and opened his laptop. He began typing an email to his former board of directors, officially announcing his resignation as CEO. His company had grown beyond his daily management anyway, and his assistant had proven more than capable of handling operations. At the bottom of the email, he added a personal note. I've found something more valuable than any business venture. I've found my family and a purpose that feeds my soul. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A convoy of black cars pulled up to the orphanage, and David recognized the governor stepping out, followed by news crews. "Mr. Chen," the governor said, shaking David's hand warmly. "Your story has touched the entire state. We'd like to propose making St. Michael's a model for orphan care statewide with full government funding and support." David looked at Jake, who had appeared at his side with several of the younger children clinging to his legs. "What do you think, son?" David asked. "Ready to help even more kids find their families?" Jake grinned, the same gap-toothed smile David remembered from 15 years ago, now mature but still radiating pure joy. "I think Mom would say we're just getting started." As the cameras rolled and the governor spoke about new legislation, David felt a hand slip into his. Little Sarah, the 10-year-old who had first welcomed him, looked up with bright eyes. "Mr. David?" she whispered. "Are you really staying forever?" David knelt down to her level, remembering another child who had asked him a similar question so many years ago. "Forever and always, sweetheart. This is home now." Sarah's face lit up with pure joy. "Does that mean you're our dad now, too?" The question hit David harder than he expected. He looked around at the dozens of children who had gathered, all watching him with hopeful eyes, each one carrying their own story of loss, their own dreams of belonging somewhere. "If you'll have me," David said softly, "I'd be honored to be your family." The cheer that erupted could have been heard 3 blocks away. Children rushed forward, wrapping David in the biggest group hug of his life. In that moment, he understood something profound. He hadn't just found his son, he'd found an entire family he never knew he needed. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down and the children went to bed, David and Jake sat on the front porch of the orphanage. The building that had once seemed destined for demolition now glowed with warm light from every window, filled with the sounds of family, laughter, bedtime stories, and the gentle murmur of love. "You know what's funny?" Jake said, leaning back in his chair. "I spent so many years wondering about my past, and it turns out my future was what really mattered." "The past brought us together," David replied. "But you're right, it's what we do moving forward that counts." Jake stood up and stretched. "Well, tomorrow we're interviewing 3 new families who want to adopt some of the younger kids, and next month we break ground on the new education center." "Sounds perfect," David said. "Sounds like family." Before heading inside, Jake paused at the door. "Dad, thank you for not giving up on finding me, even when you didn't know you were looking." David's eyes misted over. "Thank you for being worth finding, son." As Jake headed inside, David remained on the porch for a few more minutes, looking up at the stars. His phone buzzed with messages from business associates, congratulating him on the governor's announcement and the company's continued success. But David barely glanced at them. His definition of success had fundamentally changed. "Thought you might want some company," she said, settling into the chair beside him. "Margaret," David said, accepting the warm cup gratefully, "I need to ask you something. When Jake first arrived here, was there anything with him? Any clue about his identity?" Margaret was quiet for a moment. "There was one thing, a small silver locket, but it was damaged in what must have been the accident. We couldn't open it, and Jake was too young to tell us what it meant." "Do you still have it?" "Of course. I save everything the children come with. Would you like to see it?" A soft sound made him turn. Margaret Washington appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of tea. Minutes later, Margaret returned with a small jewelry box. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a tarnished silver locket. David's hands trembled as he recognized it. The locket he'd given Lisa on their first anniversary, containing a tiny photo of the 3 of them. With gentle pressure, the damaged clasp finally gave way. Inside, barely visible, but still there, was the photo. David, Lisa, and baby Tommy, all smiling at the camera. On the back, in Lisa's delicate handwriting, were the words, "Family is forever, L." "She was right," David whispered, closing the locket carefully. Family really is forever. He looked out over the orphanage grounds, where tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities to make a difference. Jake would leave for college in the fall, but he'd return. Other children would find families, but new ones would arrive. The cycle of love and care would continue. Somewhere up there, he hoped Lisa could see what they'd built, not just the buildings and programs, but the love that filled every corner of this place. His phone buzzed with a text from his former assistant. "Company stock hit an all-time high today. The board says your orphanage story has made Chen Technologies the most admired brand in Silicon Valley." David smiled and deleted the message without responding. Success, he'd learned, wasn't measured in stock prices or market share. It was measured in the giggles of children who felt safe, the proud smile of a son who'd found his father, and the knowledge that every day brought new chances to make someone's life a little brighter. As he finally headed inside, David paused to look at the new sign that would be installed tomorrow. The Michael and Lisa Chen Family Center, where every child finds home. Perfect, he thought. Absolutely perfect. For joining us on this incredible journey of loss, discovery, and the miraculous ways love finds us when we open our hearts to serve others. David and Jake's story reminds us that sometimes our greatest treasures are hidden in the very places we're called to help, and that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, commitment, and the courage to love unconditionally. If this story moved you and reminded you that it's never too late for second chances, please like, share, and subscribe to Stories Worth Telling. Join us for more tales that celebrate the extraordinary power of human connection and the beautiful truth that love always finds a way. Remember, sometimes the very thing we think will cost us everything actually gives us everything we never knew we needed. And sometimes, home isn't a place you return to, it's a place you choose to build. Until next time, keep believing in miracles, and never forget that every act of kindness creates ripples that can change the world.